Now, and this is costing. If you can get into more of this, it's really affecting employees.
Very much so. I mean, some of the popular jargon today is not just absenteeism, but presenteeism, meaning people who come to work but are very non-productive. I may show up because I don't have paid time off available, but I do as little as I can, just enough to get by. I'm present. Not engaged, but I'm present.
I had a colleague who once said, they said, these are people who have retired but simply not told anybody yet.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
I have to use that. Thank you. So that's a very direct cost. But you do have ripple effects. If people, in fact, are not showing up, you do have traditional costs of I've got to bring in maybe a temporary worker to take their place, pay somebody some overtime to get the work done, run the risk, maybe most importantly, of irritating a customer. The last thing we want to do is to irritate a customer, not deliver what they expect. And that is, when we have issues of this sort, that's one of the risks that we have.
Okay. Paul, before we go to break, briefly, because we'll dig into this in the next segment, but just give us a snapshot of what your training is like. What do you go in there? Because I know that when you go in there from talking to you. Just give us a snapshot of what we cover, how you work with employees and employers.
Well, first I go into a Zen mode now.
Actually, that is true.
First of all, I'm so passionately committed to this because I consider myself a student of people and interaction, and there's nothing that pleases me more than to see an organization where the gears are just moving really freely and things are getting done and new ideas are germinating. So the first thing that we try to do is we try to differentiate between respect versus tolerance. Okay, and a lot of people think the same thing. Actually, they're not. If I were to ask you, if you were to go home at the end of a long week and I said, "Hey, Ciarra, how's work this week?" And you said, "You know what, Paul? I felt really tolerated. It was a great week." Doesn't have the same effect as if you say, "I felt respected." So tolerance is kind of a low standard. So we then the point that we make is that respect is an active process. You can't just sit at your desk and say, "I'm respectful." You might be invisible and tolerant, but respect actually requires action. It requires that you physically and mentally engage your peers and not only take note of those things that are different, but probe more deeply, and find out more about those differences. And when you find differences, what do you also find usually at the same time? Similarities. You find if you don't engage people, how do you find the common denominators between you and other people? So that's the first thing we do, is really try to get them to recognize that respect takes work. You got to roll up your sleeves a little bit to get there.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for watching. We'll be right back in just a moment.